The past is where it stays, way back a year ago. I've changed for the better this time. I thought I would never be fine. I strive just to
Dreaming of a life in Portugal? Or maybe you're just curious about what it would be like to move here. My family and I began planning for our move way back in 2020. It took 2 more years to make it happen, and it has been quite an adventure. Before you pack your bags, listen in to hear the real stories of those who've already taken the leap. Every other Wednesday, we dive deep into the experiences of individuals and families who chose to make Portugal their home. Discover their motivations, the challenges they faced, and the unexpected joys they encountered along the way. We'll explore their preparation strategies, navigating bureaucracy, and the realities of building a new life in a foreign land. Whether you're seriously considering a move or simply curious about life in Portugal, these authentic accounts will offer invaluable insights and help you decide if this sun-drenched country is someplace you want to relocate to, or maybe just visit on vacation. Welcome to Mover, Portugal Unpacked.
I ain't going back, I'm not falling. I'll push all my chips and call all in. I'll bet on myself, you keep stalling.
Welcome, everyone, to our panel discussion. From Stars and Stripes to Saudade, navigating the American expat experience in Portugal. We have a fantastic group here today to share their insights, experiences, and burning questions for what it's truly like for Americans to make the leap and move to this beautiful country. So let's get to know our panel of esteemed people who were like, okay, Melissa, fine, we'll do this. I'm Melissa, and I host this podcast, Mover, Portugal Unpacked. My family and I left the U.S. 3 years ago, and we traveled first to Canada for a couple of months. Then we lived in Brazil for 6 months, and then we finally got to Portugal in February 2023. My husband is Brazilian and Portuguese. He's a Brazilian and a Portuguese citizen. So that qualifies me to be here via marriage, and I have a residence card. There are many ways that you can come to Portugal, though. That's just the pathway we chose because it is a little bit easier than some of the other ones. And I'm sure Rudy will talk about that later. Our daughter has Portuguese and American citizenship. And I personally am here today because I love to talk about this kind of transition and the cultural differences. And I'm really excited for the conversation. Rudy, why are you here today?
You'll never have to twist my arms to join any one of your conversation. That's for one. Let's just get that out there. My name is Rudy Sherry. I moved to Portugal 2 years ago after just being completely burned out in the US. I just kind of had my full as things were transpiring. I thought my family and I decided it's time to move out. Since moving out here, we moved out here on the D7 passive income visa. Since moving out here, we are both just much fulfilled, more fulfilled, happier, more relaxed. We have 2 young boys, and they're happier, they're more fulfilled, they're safe, and I've been really enjoying my journey here.
Awesome. All right. Becky, what brought you with us today?
Just a general interest in moving overseas that I've had for several years now. Well, I've always been interested in living overseas, I guess. Just recently, in the last few years, though, there's been more interest in that, and the uncertainty around the United States has certainly put some energy there that maybe was not there before.
And you're talking about politically, things have kind
Yes.
of
Yeah.
changed quite a bit.
Yeah, there's
And
been a huge shift.
and I do want to say that Becky and Cary both live in the central United States. So just to give an idea of where in the US you guys are coming to us from. Cary,
Yes,
what made
geographic.
you decide to join us today?
Well, I'll never pass up an opportunity to talk about what it would be like living outside the United States. And it's something that we've talked about as a family what that would look like. And I would agree with Becky that the political climate and the shift that I see the United States moving toward has me alarmed. And so this is kind of like, what better time than now to pursue this, or at least look into it.
And you have little kids too, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we do.
All right. Well, let's thank you all for agreeing to do this, first of all. And if you love it, we can do it again. But for today,
I
let's
don't
go
know.
ahead and dive right in. Um, so let's go ahead and start a little bit with kind of the Portuguese experience from my and Rudy's perspective, since we both have kind of made the leap and we are, I don't know if I would say we're seasoned expats. I mean, you start thinking that you are, and then you meet someone who's lived here for 10 years and you find out that maybe you're not as seasoned as you think you are. And Becky and Cary, as we go along, if you have questions, just feel free to be like, Melissa, calm down. We have a question. All right.
Okay.
Okay. So I'll ask you the question, Rudy, and then I'll answer it. So to
Sure.
begin with, was there a primary catalyst or motivation that caused you to leave the US and move specifically to Portugal? So was there a tipping point for you?
Um, I would say this is one thing happened. I would say, you know what, enough is enough. It was a number of things that there was just kind of the happening that I just kind of felt that it was not the right space for me anymore. Um, from then the cost of living in the US have gotten pretty much out of control. You know, when I moved 2 years ago, I was already a father of two, and just the ability to just put a roof over our heads, food on the table, and sending the kids to school was expensive, right? And I just kind of felt like, yeah, and I was making really good money, and it was really expensive. I was almost living from paycheck to paycheck, and that didn't make any sense to me. And as I was kind of observing the political atmosphere, I felt that I was very certain, I was close to certain that things would turn out the way it is now. I felt like, the current president was going to win, given what was not happening on the other side. They were just not, I just didn't feel like they were putting their best foot forward,
Hmm.
um, all across the board. So the combination of those two things had me really kind of feeling down. One day for my birthday, my wife scheduled a birthday dinner. It was a surprise. Um, to my surprise, two of my friends came over and we had a great conversation. And it was during that conversation that we kind of walked down memory lanes and we talked about our thesis that was done in Czech Republic. And after the Czech Republic, my friend who is from Portugal told me, "Hey, why don't we go travel around Europe and let's start with Portugal?" I was okay, why not? So I came to Portugal and absolutely fell in love with it. The people are amazing. The culture is fantastic. The food is wonderful. The weather, the environment is really something truly inspiring. And so we started talking about that, and he said, "Hey, why don't you move to Portugal? What's stopping you?" And I was working remotely at the time, and my wife and I kind of started thinking about it. We said, "Well, that's right. Why don't we move to Portugal? We're not happy here. We've been talking about moving out of state to reduce our overhead costs. Everywhere that we've looked at, we haven't really fallen in love with. Why not put Portugal on the list of options?" And it went from the bottom of the list to the top of the list in like 48 hours.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much my story. How about yourself?
Well, our experience was similar. My husband, and who is a Portuguese citizen but had never been to the country, he has birthright citizenship. So his great grandfather was Portuguese, but he grew up in Brazil. So we came here on vacation, and I was a burnout educator even when we came to visit, and I just felt myself kind of slow down while we were here. And my reasons for moving here are very political in terms of I no longer felt safe in the education system as an educator. And I now have my daughter now is 12. She just turned 12. But at the time, she was 8. And I didn't feel safe with her being in the education system either. So yeah, my reasoning was a little bit from that standpoint. I had kind of stuck it out in the US education system, but I felt like that was a pretty politically charged arena. I feel like education is a microcosm of everything that happens in the United States. So if you want to see what our issues are as a society, go into any classroom in America and you will see it.
Yeah.
And just in just a little pocket of it, right? And I just decided that, well, my husband said, I'm willing if you're willing. And I said, let's do it. And it took us 2 years, almost 3 to really get it pulled off. A lot of saving and a lot of planning, but no regrets, no regrets at all. So, Rudy, a follow up to that is, were there any misconceptions that you had before you moved here that were dispelled for you?
Let's see. I think I think a common misconception is people like to use the word cheap when they think about Portugal. Oh, it's so cheap. This is cheap. This is cheap. I think first of all, it's the wrong language to use. No one, showing respect to the local Portuguese people. No one wants to call their country cheap, right? But um, things are very affordable here. I was under the impression that housing was going to be much more affordable. That is not the case. If you want to rent, it's definitely out. If you want to rent outside of the city, it is absolutely affordable. But within the city, prices have gone a bit haywire. Um, so yeah, that was a big misconception. I thought, the way people describe it is like you can come out here and buy 40 acres for $4. No, that's not true.
So, that may come as a surprise to you, Becky and Cary, does it? That housing is expensive here?
I don't know that I had any preconceptions about housing in particular. I think there is a general perception, at least for me, that a lot of countries are more affordable than the United States. Healthcare, housing, food, common goods. Maybe not some things like electronics or cars that we see as necessities in the United States, but are more luxuries in other nations. Um, but just in general, I think my perception is the other countries are more affordable in general.
I would agree with that, that was my perception. And I've never looked at Portugal specifically, but I'm constantly on real estate websites for Costa Rica. And so Portugal, I was assuming, would be somewhat similar, at least a little bit more affordable than the United States.
You know, I've interviewed 2 podcast guests about moving to Portugal, and both of them, Costa Rica was on their short list. So I think that at one time, Portugal was very affordable housing wise. What has happened is so many expats have moved here that we have caused the price of housing to really go up. And so, like Rudy said, we in Portugal, we don't have any huge cities. Lisbon and Porto are both very large cities. But if you're coming from someplace like Los Angeles, then Lisbon and Porto are, not that big. Um, but we have a lot of, I don't know, what'd you say, Rudy? Like 20,000 to 50,000 people cities that just kind of sprinkle themselves up the coast.
Yeah.
And those cities tend to, their apartments and their houses have become very expensive. And then we have our southern region, the Algarve, which is where it's nice and warm and sunny. And most people feel like tiny towns, big towns, it doesn't matter. It's very unaffordable to live there right now, but it is because so many people have moved in. And so I came here from Seattle, and in Seattle, we didn't own a home, but the home that we were living in, if we had owned it, we were renting. Um, we probably could have sold it for 850,000 to maybe even up to 1 million. And so people do that in the States. Even if you had a $300,000 home, 10 years ago, you could sell your home and move here and buy a $50,000 home. But those $50,000 homes are no longer available. And if they are, they're fixer-uppers and not in a
Yeah.
good way. But to your point, Becky, a lot of people, we don't have a car. So that's an expense we don't have. Taxes tend to be pretty high here. But when you go to the grocery store, whatever price the food says, that's what you pay for it. And it's that way with everything. So there's no, 25% sales tax that you don't see. It's usually your income tax that is really taxed the highest, in my opinion. You can tell me if that's wrong, Rudy. You might know that statistic better than I. And I think luxury goods are taxed pretty high, what they consider to be luxury goods. Am I on the right path here?
Yeah, I think Portugal is more of a socialist country, and so the prices of almost everything is pretty fairly reasonable, or if not, probably very affordable. Outside of the homes, the properties, it's very reasonable. But to your point, the import tax is pretty high. And so if you want to buy a car, if that car is a luxury car, the import tax on a percentage basis is going to be high. So the luxury items that are coming from outside of Portugal are pretty pricey for that reason.
But something like food, we can never get over this. Like when we went to the grocery store in Seattle, if we came out with a bag of groceries, like a paper sack full of groceries, we were lucky if that was 40 US dollars. Sometimes it was even more. It was just outrageous. And we didn't think anything of it because that's just how it was. But here, I mean, it is rare. We're a family of three. We shop pretty regularly because we don't have a lot of storage space. And we also don't have very big refrigerator. And that's pretty common here. So I would say we get food probably every 3 days or so. But we rarely spend more than 30 euros, which would be about $32, $33.
Yeah. And what something about the lack of storage room and the smaller fridges is an interesting fact is the reason why the fridge is so small is because you are expected to buy food every few days. Why? Because the food is fresh.
Right.
Everything is fresh. You eat, everything is fresh. Instead of, in the US, you have, your big refrigerator, and then you have that additional huge freezer in the garage where you just put stuff in when you can find the deal and it stays there for weeks or months. And it's just like that's not how it's done out here. Here's like every couple of days, just go buy what you need for a few days and you eat and it's good, it's healthy for you. There's no organic this and organic that. It's just food. It's all organic.
Yeah, because most of it is organic. They're not using a lot of antibiotics and pesticides and things like that.
Yeah.
So then is the accessibility like this, you don't have to drive to go get your groceries. Like there's little corner grocery stores or markets, or like it makes that shopping every couple of days or whatever really easy to do then. It's not
It
an
does.
excursion.
So we live in town. I would say if you live out of town, you probably still have these, but it's like one or two places you can go to. And we have, like, by my apartment, I live in an apartment, and they have these things called fruterias, which in English would be fruiteria, which sounds grosser when you say it in English. But in Portuguese, it's pronounced frutaria. And It's basically a fruit and vegetable market, but they have everything. They're tiny. And actually, Becky, you may remember this. I remember in the 70s, I remember having these in the United States, but we don't anymore. They turned into
Right.
convenience stores.
Yes.
But almost everybody has, I would say, either a, and they have these things called mini mercados, which is a mini market. It's a little baby grocery store. And for pretty much all of us, you have one of those within a 10-minute walk. They're all over the place. And they get fruits and vegetables delivered to them every day. They're fresh produce. Some of them have meat, but a lot of them don't because we also have butcher shops. Again, most of us have a butcher within 10 minutes of us where they are bringing in meat every day. And then we do have big grocery stores, but you might have to walk a little more. Where I live, it's probably a 15-minute walk, 10 to 15-minute walk to, I can think off the top of my head, four pretty large grocery stores. Well, Mercadona's maybe a 20-minute walk. So that would make it five.
Okay.
But the cities are set up to be this way, to be walkable, because that's what the Portuguese do. A lot of times, families, it's not that families don't have cars, but they'll have one car for the whole family.
Yeah. Yeah. It's part of the
Well, that used to
culture.
be the norm in the United States, right? There was
Yes,
just the
it
family
did.
car. And now, we've got, we pared down, but we have three cars in the driveway. And,
Yeah.
somebody comes over and everybody drives separate. And yeah. So that, while we're on the topic of affordability, what healthcare, what's, what's the healthcare system like in Portugal? We
I'll
all
let you
know
go.
I was going to say a word that you'll have to bleep in the
No, no,
US.
we're that kind of podcast. So say it, girl.
Okay,
Do
the
it.
the healthcare system is fucked in the United States.
Yeah. Put it out there. It is.
It's completely fucked.
The
Yeah,
worst.
it really is. Rudy, I'll let you go first on this one.
Oh gosh, the healthcare system here is fantastic. That's it, simply put. There's no so this is wild. Like it, yeah, I'm from New York, and this is to me like, wait a minute. Like I had to check. And even I made a video about this on TikTok and posted that same video on YouTube, and people on YouTube call me a liar. But the people on TikTok, like everyone is like, yeah, what else are we go? Like, there's so many Portuguese there. They're like, yeah, what else would we do? Like, I don't understand. Like, what are you talking about? Of course, this is what we do, and we do this and we do that. So, healthcare system here. If you go to the doctors, you don't have to pay for it. The normal healthcare system, you just pay it, just a what is it? Do you pay a copay for just Go ahead, Melissa.
Well, I was going to say, so you can use the public system or you can have
Okay.
insurance and use a private system. But a lot of times you're going to the same places and the same doctors. One, you just sometimes have to get on a waiting list to wait for an appointment, whereas the other one you can sometimes get in a little bit more quickly. So I think some services you do have to pay for, but it's very minimal when you do,
Yeah.
like $10 for a doctor's visit, depending on what kind of doctor and where you're going. It's
Not for physical. I'm talking about like
no.
a serious medical situation, you'll pay $10. We have private, so we pay for like a monthly thing, but we pay like 6 months ahead of, I believe, and it's affordable. Like what we pay for our private insurance here, we probably paid that in prescription in a month in the US. Like it is so well managed. And if you when you have a baby, when you have a baby, you pay like $15 for the delivery.
So, Carrie,
Uh,
I'm wondering if this baby thing is resonating with you because it wasn't too long ago that you had a baby.
Yeah, so So I delivered, we're super holistic. My dad's a chiropractor, so I grew up that way. We eat as much organically as we can. We're a no fragrance, no toxin household. And so I delivered at a birth center with a midwife, and we paid $3,000 out of pocket. And at the time, my husband and I both were teachers. And so that salary it's not a lot. And my husband was also coaching football. So his salary that he made from coaching football paid for the delivery. And I know that, my sister went to a hospital and she had emergency C-section and blood transfusions, and her bill was, I mean, I don't know that I would have been able to pay it off. And so
Yeah.
I'm thankful that I didn't have any emergency situations, that comparatively so, my birth was cheaper than a lot of other women in the United States. But no,
Yeah.
$15 sounds amazing. And I mean, I know that as far as maternal care, pre and post delivery is significantly better than in the United States. I think United States ranks one of the highest with birth deaths out of developed countries, which is insane to me to think about.
Yeah, I don't know
And
what the
there's a,
stat is. Sorry. I don't know what the stat is now. And I think Melissa knows this, that I used to be a doula and, in a previous life, a childbirth educator and breastfeeding support. And, so this was a while back, but at the time, we ranked 50th in developed nations in maternal and infant morbidity and mortality rates. And I don't think those rates have improved. And we certainly see those rates go even lower when we're talking about women of color or Indigenous people. So it's, not only is there the expense, but the healthcare outcomes in the United States compared to other developed nations are just shameful, really
Yeah.
shameful.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Well, I'm sorry, Rudy, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say one thing that is unique about the Portuguese culture is their attention to women in particular, right? There is a if you're in line, if I'm at a store, I'm in line, and a pregnant woman comes in, it is expected that she will go to the front of the line.
I
It's
used to
expected.
say that they should have like pregnant and women with small children parking at the front of the parking line
Yeah.
like for handicap, because going to the grocery store with three small children and being pregnant was not bad.
It's
They
wild.
actually have that here. They
Yeah.
Yeah.
have family parking. Yeah.
Nice. Nice.
Got
Not
family
every
So,
parking.
place, but it is places.
so is that also the case that kind of I don't know, traditional respect also for elderly people?
Yes, it is. Yes, 100%.
Yep.
I've noticed that even young teenagers will hold doors open and let older, and Portugal's not a perfect country, so there are assholes everywhere, right? And we've got a percentage of those here too. No human population is perfect, but for the majority, they do give a lot of deference to their aging population.
Yeah.
And so don't quote me, don't fact check me on this, but our architect told us that, I think it was him that told us this, that there's actually a law in Portugal against catcalls. Like men used to, like, be able to do catcalls as women walked by. And this doesn't happen, at least that I've noticed. Not to me personally, but I mean, like, even other, females, I haven't noticed it happening to them. And again, I'm not saying, because I do think that this society is a hair bit machismo. However, it can be very traditional and very the patriarchy is alive here, so let's just put that out there. But at the same time, they changed some things where people could get, and men could get fined if they whistled or did a cat call as a girl walked by. Like I said, we might have to fact check that, but there is a noticeable, I'm glad you brought that up, Rudy, just a noticeable, I guess it's just common respect. And it's really sad that it's noticeable. I mean, I think
Yeah.
it's noticeable because I came from the United States and that
Yeah.
it's a little less existent there.
So let's call catcalls what they are, public harassment.
Yeah.
So there's a law against public harassment in Portugal.
You
Oh,
can get
wow.
fined for it. Yeah. I
Yeah.
think you can
Sounds
get
way
fined
too
for it.
Harassment.
logical.
Harassment and privacy is something that Portugal takes extremely seriously. So even like ring doorbells and that kind of thing is not allowed.
Mm,
So they take security very seriously here.
that's interesting. Do you mind if we go back before we get too further into next questions? Um, so when you were talking about when you first, some of the benefits of Portugal, I wondered, um, do you think that there is this romanticization or a honeymoon or like a vacation type of atmosphere when you first arrive because things are new and different and you're relaxed, things are slower? Do you think there's that kind of romanticizing the experience when you first arrived?
100% for me. What do you think, Rudy?
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
So
I
do you feel like that?
definitely, I felt like because I was burnt out, I thought, well, if I have all the time in the world to, do the things that I want to do and relax and what have you, in Portugal, this beautiful place, everything in my life is going to be better. And I'm going to back up for a second because I wanted to say too, I had a misconception about Portugal being this place where it was going to be challenging for me to find the things that I was used to having in the United States. And so before I forget to say this, they have just about everything here. So if you're thinking about doing a move like this, it is beneficial, in my opinion, to sell everything and start over. We just brought suitcases with us. Of course, your memorabilia and things like that. We stored them in the US, and every time we go, we bring a suitcase of stuff, like pictures or whatever, back with us. But this is not a developing country. Okay, so I'm going to say that again. This is not a developing country. It is a developed country, but it had years of dictatorship, which was an economic hardship on the country. It is not a country with a lot of money. They still don't have a lot of money. Salaries are low here, but that does not mean they don't have access to the things that the rest of the world has access to. Now, accessing them can be a bit of a bureaucratic process sometimes, depending on the thing that you want or anything that you need. And I would say I had romanticized that piece of things that, oh, you have to wait in line a few times. And you know what? It's a slower culture. Well, I sometimes wonder how the Portuguese do it. So, for example, you can't go to the bank at lunch hour and get anything done. And the employees in places. Okay, so let me back up here. I'm going to tell you my first time that a Portuguese person made me cry was, and I'm calling you out, Oshan. Oshan and Caldas da Rainha. There was the meanest cashier lady there. I was trying to do the self check because that was easier than speaking Portuguese. And I had a thing of bananas. And there was nowhere. Usually, when you do the self check, there's a scale and you weigh it and you look up the thing and there's no sticker on the bananas. There's like nothing. I don't know what to do. So you say con licença, which is with license, or excuse me. That's the nice way to say it. And I knew how to say that. And I'm like, con licença. And the lady's standing like 3 feet away from me and she's talking to someone. And finally, she looks at me And I'm like, eu preciso ajuda. I need you to help. And she just points like at the fruit department and goes back to her conversation. I don't have good enough Portuguese to navigate this situation. I didn't know what to do. So I cried, took the
Oh,
bananas back, put them back, got the rest of my stuff, showed her my receipt, and cried all the way home, thinking I'm never going to be able to buy bananas again. I'm going to have Lucas do everything for me. Um, so that kind of thing is not uncommon, unfortunately. And now I know that you just keep saying, con licença, eu no entiendo. I don't understand. Excuse me, I don't understand. I got into an argument a few weeks ago with a guy at the pharmacy where I found myself I speak Portuguese like a 3-year-old. Okay. So I need medicine. I need medicine now. I need this. I mean, I was very like a 3-year-old. And I told him, I go to other store. No need you. I go to other store. And then all of a sudden he was able to help me. But it was just that I don't even know what that is, Rudy, but I encounter it on from time to time where and it's not just me, other Portuguese encounter it too. And they just kind of bully their way. So I actually interviewed someone who said and he's Portuguese, but he grew up in the United States. And he said it's the law of the big potato. And there's a Portuguese way to say that I don't remember. And he said, when you open your bag of potatoes, you always choose the big one first. And he said, Melissa, you got to go in and be the big potato. He's like, I don't care if you were the last one in line, be the damn big potato. So I have taken that to heart where I'm like, I am not leaving here. I am not doing this. I am, you kind of have to advocate for yourself, which is really hard when you don't have Portuguese. So I was not prepared for just the amount of stress it is to not know the language. And everybody's going to say, it's okay, everyone in Portugal speaks English. Bullshit. They don't. And sometimes when they do, they won't. So you have to kind of be prepared for that. And it's hard. That first year is hard. Cultural transition is a very real thing. You feel lonely. I felt isolated. I felt like even the friends I was making, most of them were expats like me. But just because we're expats doesn't mean that our values align. And so I had a lot of start and stops on friendships, people that I thought were my friends that weren't. There are big groups of people that move here that have a lot of money. That was not my situation. And so then you kind of ride this line of, they're doing things and talking about things that are not your reality. And I mean, it's a bit like high school at times all over again. And that's as much as I'll say about that. But there's a lot of tough pieces to moving here. And then your family's there and the time zone's different and you miss things. Like when your daughter, this has not happened to me, but it probably will. When my daughter has her first baby, nobody's pregnant yet. I'm just projecting this misery on myself. But that, I probably won't be there for the birth. It's 15-hour plane ride. It's tough you kind of have to accept that and I don't think you think about that when you make the move because you're excited about moving. That was a very long-winded answer. I apologize.
No, not at all. Can we tease that apart a little bit? So do you think that I mean, I would be afraid of being the ugly American, to assert myself that way. I am fine with inserting myself in the US. I don't have any problems with that. I mean, I gotta pull myself back because, I've been told I'm scary. Um, and so I would be concerned about being the ugly American and then do you think that there was some kind of nationalism in those responses or the
Oh,
reactions you got, or
sometimes.
that's just
Sometimes. I mean, I think that Rudy, you can say whether you do, but I think it goes back to what Rudy said. You can pretty much say it as long as you're respectful. They respect each other even in those exchanges most of the time. What do you think about that, Rudy?
Yeah, I've never experienced. I think there's one experience I've had in a supermarket where when I first got here, kind of similar to you as I was going through the checkout, but you can't take the cart with you, and she was trying to tell me I wasn't allowed to take the cart to the other side, but I just
Mhm.
couldn't understand it. But luckily for me, someone who was also checking out spoke both Portuguese and English and translated for me, and I just left it on, just put it back in its place. I was able to move on. I haven't had any experience, um, any difficult experiences with the language so far. There are certain times where I go somewhere and I just don't understand. I'll just try to use Google. I find that for me, if I try my best to speak Portuguese or start the conversation with Google Translate, it's like knowing that then maybe they may not speak English and it kind of just trying at least. People tend to be very receptive. Um, but it is just when I think about the traffic here, the way people drive, it is a very aggressive. It's kind of like New York, right? It's people are,
Mhm.
they drive, with gusto, and I think that's what's happening in certain stores as well. That people are kind of like, the crying baby gets fed first, kind of a thing.
Yeah. I think it could be just a little surprising because I do think that actually, Jose, the guy that I interviewed, said you can always tell an American because we also have a tendency to kind of sit back
Yeah.
and because we don't want to look like the jackass Americans. So we sit back and we wait for things to happen. And then a lot of times things don't. Um, so speaking to your point, I think coming from your background, Rudy, with growing up in New York, maybe you're just a little more used to that.
Yeah.
Aggression's a good way, but it's not a bad aggression. It is just it is a very much a New
For me,
Yorker
it's
thing.
home.
People don't smile, and we're three Midwesterner girls right here. Look at all of us smiling away on here. And I mean,
You
I
gotta
think
use your
for
resting bitch face when you're in Portugal.
it's called a resting Portuguese face here. It's very much move on. So,
I this is specifically for Rudy. One of the things that my husband and I have talked about and is um, an added piece to our thinking of moving overseas is my husband is a Black American, and so we are in a mixed relationship with two girls. I'm bilingual, and we want to move somewhere. If we were thinking of moving out of the United States, a country that is receptive and open to not only um, Black men specifically, because we know that in the United States, it can be very difficult depending on where you live, and then also with mixed race families. Um, Costa Rica was one of those top ones that are receptive to. I mean, you've got a lot of the historical um, movement from the North Atlantic slave trade. And so you've got a large demographic of Afro Latinos in Costa Rica. But Portugal, how is that like for you and your family and living there in that transition?
That's a great question. It was one of the primary reasons why I left the US, right? When we talk about the politics, I remember a couple of days after my son was born, we were eating at IHOP. No, that's not true. It wasn't after my son was born. After the election, it was right after the election. Well, my wife and I were eating at IHOP, and there were a couple of veterans a few tables away, and they started calling me the N-word. And he was like, oh, this is familiar, but I haven't heard that in a while. Like it has been a while since somebody called me that in person. And I was like, wow, this is how it really resonated with me. Like, this is how this administration is, right? This is crazy. And this was in Napa, right? And so when we started to think about moving, our first thought was moving outside of California, so because it's so expensive there. And all of the states that were a bit more affordable, where we could buy a house and some land and that kind of thing, were all red states. And having two young sons that are two young Black boys, I did not want them to have that experience because I grew up um, in a town where I was the first African American person in that school, and that was awful. It was not a great experience. So I didn't want my kids to go through that experience. And so when we decided to look at Portugal, we understood that, Portugal has a history where diversity, especially with Africans. But since that, Portugal is a very old country. Since that, they've learned quite a bit and adjusted and are now meaningfully different than what it used to be hundreds of years ago. And it's miles ahead of the United States. I will give you one single example, and this is the example I tell all of my friends. The day after I moved to Portugal, literally the day after, we moved into, we had a little bit of furniture in our house through a company that helped us find our apartment. And kind of, we had like three mattresses on the floors, just basic stuff, a couple things in the refrigerator that they put in there for us and that kind of thing. So we got there in the afternoon. We were tired. We went to sleep. Two kids, more luggage than I want to. We had like 22 luggages. I was like a packed mule. Like it was around my neck. It was all over the place. Uh, Crashed the next morning. My wife used to tell me these stories all the time about like waking up and like having to go and having a cafe and blah blah blah. So I'm like, okay, we're here. There's a cafe downstairs. Let's do it. Grab my wallet. I head downstairs. I go and get two coffees and two pastries. I get ready to pay. I forgot to bring European euro dollars. I had American cash. Like, shoot. I'm like, okay, I'll pay American. The guy's like, no, I'm sorry, we don't take a US currency. I'm like, okay, no problem. I'll pull out my credit card. He's like, we don't accept credit. I'm like, okay. What do we do here? This is all I got. He goes, don't worry about it. He literally packed my things, um, gives it to me and said, don't worry about it. Pay me later. Like, it was the very next day. I haven't been here for 20 hours. He's like, don't worry about it. Take it. Pay me later.
Rudy,
That's
how
it.
tall are you?
I'm 6'3". I'm a big guy. I'm a big guy. Like I'm the guy when I walk into a store, like people are like, okay, they follow me. Like I'm used to being that guy. I'm a big guy. I have to be very thoughtful about how I approach people because people, I'm not like a big muscular guy, but I'm a tall size and I have broad shoulders. So I'm conscious of that. They said, take it, pay me later. Like my mind was blown. That has never happened to me before. And I hate to go back to TikTok, but like I made a video about this on TikTok, and it is the norm in Portugal. Like people were like, we're not Americans, man. Like, welcome to Portugal. Like in many stores, people pay for their things at the end of the week. They just come in and buy to get their things. There's a ledger and they pay for it at the end of the week.
They
People
trust you to come back.
Yeah, they trust you to come back. They know that this is a community, and if you don't come back, everyone will know that you're not true to your word. They treat
So you have an
us
unspoken social contract. Sorry,
exactly.
I had interrupted your flow.
No, 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 absolutely. You're absolutely right. They treat us like Black Americans. Like, I haven't had any issues. I see the police like, hey. It's like there are no problems. I haven't been stopped in my car, not once. I haven't been profiled. I haven't been nothing. And when I go out to stores, I went to the water park last week. It was all good. It is like living. It's what I imagine white people feel like in America.
Mm.
I love that.
It is crazy. And I'll tell you something else. I'll close with this. This is for you, for your husband, for your children. And if share this with your husband, and he will get it immediately. There is a there is a burden that you carry as a man, as a Black man. There's a burden that you carry on your shoulders every single day when you walk out of your house. There is that weight, that constant thought about how is this person is looking at me? What are they thinking? What do I need to do? If this happens, how would I handle it? How do I diffuse the situation? How do I make sure that if I leave this store, um, I keep my receipt. Like, I keep receipts because I want to have proof that I was in this store. I'll throw it away next week. I was in this store at that time. That's my track record. Like, I was there. So if something happens and say, oh, that guy was there. No, I was. And look at the receipt. I was right there. Like, there's this when you see these flags and these things. It's just so constant, and you worry about your children, how they're going to be treated. Like, I didn't want to tell my kids about racism at 4 years old. Like, I didn't want to put that kind of burden on them. There's this constant weight that you have on your shoulders. And because you were born into it, you've lived with it your entire life, that it's become the norm. And you don't realize just how heavy it is and how burdensome it is until you no longer have to carry it. When like I I go into a place, there's an elevator, there's a woman in there, I just walk in and go. In the US, I'll wait for the next one. Right? If I'm walking down the street and I turn the corner and there's a woman there in the US, I'll stay here and let her get, far enough, or I'll cross the street and trying to speed up so I can be ahead of her so she's not worried, and all of these little things, that all these little barriers, this weight that you have on you, like that's part of your daily routine. And you don't realize just how heavy it is until you just don't have to carry it anymore. And that is the experience as a Black man in Portugal. That was a long-winded answer, but yeah,
It's very informative and no, definitely appreciated. Thank you for sharing your experience. And I
of
know
course.
that it carries a lot of weight. And so I appreciate it. My husband will listen to it and he'll appreciate it.
Yeah,
So thank you.
no problem.
And I'm going to add Rudy's information, including his TikTok, on the show
Oh,
notes
good,
for this
because I was gonna go
because,
look him up on TikTok.
Me too.
well, please do. Please look him up because Rudy not only is a TikTok superstar, but like I said, he's an entrepreneur as well. So, in the interest of time, because I think that both Becky and Cary could get a lot out of your side gig, or it's actually your main gig. Your main gig. Can you tell us a little bit about that, Rudy?
Sure thing. One of the things that you talked earlier about, Rebecca, how it is when you first get here. For me, it was, I took a lot of time to kind of sort of reflect on my previous chapters and really think thoroughly about how I'm going to approach the next chapters of my life. And one thing that I realized is it was very difficult to move out here. Overly difficult and overly complicated, mostly because there's so many opinions that I joined a lot of Facebook groups and that kind of thing. And just I asked a question, is there like too many different opinions and I don't know what the real answer is. And it was just it's the bureaucracy, how do you get the right information? There are relocation specialists. We sent the same email to multiple relocation specialists, and they all give us different recommendations. And so it was just very difficult. So I think, and I and like I said, like the very next day, the experience as a black man in this country is meaningfully different. And so I thought it would be important work to help other people achieve what I've achieved without the burden, all the confusion and that kind of thing. So I created this website called askrudy.ai. And it's essentially a place where you can ask. It's an artificial intelligence AI that serves you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It is trained on the actual information about moving across to a new country, and it's trained on the laws, regulations of Portugal and many different countries. So when you ask a question, you get the answer, not everybody's personal experience, right? And I thought that was super important. So I've been working on this, and I'll keep working on this, and I think it's going to be a really powerful tool to help folks like you guys and my yeah. I wish I had it when I was moving
Me
to help
too.
move abroad. Yeah,
I think that's one of the things that is most intimidating, or, like, where do I even start? So I've thought about this and I've thought about it and I've thought about it. We've looked at, I mean, and certainly, like, I think one of the major concerns for me is like language barriers, but then the real big one is the bureaucracy. Like, where do I even start
yeah,
with this? I have no idea. And how far down the rabbit hole and how much money and time do I want to expend in investing into, moving somewhere if that doesn't work out? So, like, New Zealand has a website that, I mean, it's so multi-layered, but you can find this tool that essentially they give you a point system on, like, where you would rate as far as, like, are you a preferred profession, yada, 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 and whether or not you really meet the criteria um, that applying for a long-term visa would even be worth the while. So does
yeah.
Portugal have something similar to that? And keep talking because I've got to let a dog outside, so I will just jump off camera, but I'll be able to hear you through my headphones.
That's your thing. I don't think Portugal. I haven't seen anything like that from Portugal. Have you, Melissa?
No, I mean the closest that they've had a couple of pathways to get in that were a little easier. I think the biggest one was probably the golden visa. And when people talk about the golden visa, it was if you spend $500,000 on property, then you get citizenship. And I think you have to have it for 2 years before your citizenship is completed. But I think the lesser talked about point there is there were other areas where it wasn't quite 500,000. It was kind of a sliding scale depending on, what the equivalent of that would be for the area that you were purchasing in. However, they have, because of the housing and we're going to call it a crisis because it's at crisis proportions now, they are stopping some of those programs. But they still have the digital nomad visa. At least right now, I don't think that's changed yet. And then they've got the D7 and the D8
Yeah,
pathways, and then the citizenship by birthright, which is, and actually, there are other countries that have that too. I think maybe Italy and Spain both have that. So I know that a lot of people that I'm talking to right now are looking for do you or your spouse have any ties? So I know that a lot of people are looking at that pathway. But as far as a point system, to my knowledge, Portugal doesn't have anything like that. And if they did, it would be a bureaucratic nightmare. I am quite certain. Because even our easy pathways are a little bit challenging here. You have to be very patient.
yeah. Which is strange when you think about you can pay for almost anything at the ATM.
Yes, yes, you can. He is right. As a matter of fact, the bank lady got mad. When I say got mad, Portuguese mad, which is, but she was like, why are you up here asking me about this thing that we were asking?" She's like, "Why don't you take care of this at the ATM?" And we couldn't actually take care of it at the ATM, but they they do have some interesting processes here.
I
Absolutely.
mean, bureaucracy is bureaucracy, right?
Yeah.
Well, and that creates jobs in a country where people need jobs. So,
Well, and then speaking of jobs, I know really quickly because we're cutting it close, and I don't mean to bring up this question right at the very end, but what do you do for jobs? I mean, my husband's a principal, I'm a teacher, and I'm a Spanish teacher, and so it's not like I can go over to Portugal and teach Spanish. So what do you do about that? And can you make a living that would support your family coming over with certain degrees in the United States?
well, I'll let you go first, Rudy, and then I'll answer.
Sure thing. I think you undervaluing yourself. You are a Spanish teacher and you speak English. Do you speak any other languages?
Just those two right now.
Okay. So you're a Spanish teacher and your husband is a principal. Like the education system here in Portugal is a huge priority and it's a growing field in Portugal. Both publicly, there are private school as well as in tutoring, right? So there's a huge emphasis and care for teachers in Portugal. They have a they actually respect the people who are molding our kids here, which is, duh. In addition, think about it from this way. There are a lot of people from all over the world who are migrating into Portugal who need the additional support to teach their kids English, right? Reading, writing, like just being proficient in the English language. And I would be thrilled because my kids now, I mean, my kids, we've been here for 2 years and they speak Portuguese to each other at home, right? So they're learning like that. So I would be overjoyed if my kids spoke English, Spanish, Portuguese, French, and Creole, right? It's that much better. And second languages is the norm in Portugal. So in school, they teach French, in school, they teach English. And so that's why so many people here speak 3 to 4 languages. So I don't think you'll have any issues from that front.
So, my husband works uh, for a company and he works remotely. He works in IT. Um, so that is definitely always a pathway. I will say that I'm not working. Um, we saved up a year's salary before we moved. So I my initial idea was to work. And then he switched jobs, and that did not become a necessity for me. So I haven't. However, Rudy is absolutely right. Having an education degree, especially in an American capacity, is kind of good. So I have taught English to people, especially with your Spanish background. It's going to help because Portuguese, now they're going to get mad if you say this to them, but the languages are similar and they're structured. They're both Latin-based languages, so they're structured similarly. And that makes, if you're fluent in Spanish, it will be easier for you to teach Portuguese speakers English. We have a really high Brazilian population here in Portugal because Brazil and Portugal have an agreement since Brazil was colonized by the Portuguese. It's kind of a I don't know if I should call it a reparation, but they have an agreement where people can come from Brazil on as long as they have a job, they can live here. Um, so there in Brazil, a lot of people know a few English basics because it's taught in their public school system, but a lot of them really want to learn English better. So it's a really good place to do that as a side gig. Um, I made 20 euros an hour, just to give you an idea. uh, when I was teaching English. I also worked temporarily for a company, and again, it's a lot of it's language-based things. It was students who are from other countries that were filling out college applications, and they needed help with their writing specifically. So, and that paid around 60 euros an hour. So it was, I mean, sometimes you have to piecemeal it. Teachers here, the average teacher makes 25,000 euros a year. With your experience, with my experience, I probably could have gotten a job within the public system making around 30,000 euros. And the euro and dollar are not that different. So that's not very much money. However, it's considered one of the better paying jobs in Portugal. And then we have international schools here which might be a better fit for your husband if he wants to stay within the education field. They still don't tend to pay really well. But like Rudy said, probably one of the big differences, a lot of people come here and they're like, oh, the educators don't get paid very well here either. But they do get a lot more respect from the parents. There is this understanding that the teachers and the educational leaders are the sage on the stage, not the parents, not the community. The teacher is respected as being the professional. Having said that, teachers do strike quite a bit here if you're in the public system. And a lot of that is because they aren't getting paid well. And they are advocating for shorter, the same thing that we all in education advocate for, fewer students in the class. And they have some of the same issues that we do. But a lot of
Well,
people, I'm sorry, go ahead.
well, I was just saying, I would be curious to know if it would even out. My husband, we pay 1,300 a month for insurance because he went to a different district, and we've never had to pay for insurance before, both being educators and working in the same districts. And so now, that's 1,300 a month coming out of his paycheck, and we don't go to the doctor. We don't. That's just an insurance policy that we have that we don't utilize. And so I would be curious, if it would actually even out to be about the same.
Yeah.
I think in a lot of ways it will, especially with the other things we talked about, your groceries and your, just the cost of living tends to be quite a bit less.
And I think something I want to highlight is I never would have imagined I would have created Ask Rudy unless I have moved out of the US. So you don't know what opportunities lies ahead once you kind of take the leap forward. So you never know. You might be the person who's gonna start a school. You might be the person who starts a daycare. Who knows? You could start maybe a tech company. You could do anything. But once you'll go into that experience, you'll see some of the struggles, some of the pains that you personally suffer. You're gonna think to yourself, there has to be a better way to do this, and eventually you're gonna be like, why don't I just do it?
There is a little bit of risk, but there is a lot of opportunity. That's a really good point, Rudy. And I want to tell both of you ladies the same thing. Rudy and I have talked about this before. It's scary. It's a leap. And most of us have families that we're dragging along with us, right? And it's like, oh my gosh, what if we're making the biggest mistake? Um, I know a little bit about both of you, and you can always go back. You have families that are there that support you and are waiting for you, you know. So that was kind of our mantra as well, was if it doesn't work out, that's why we saved up a year's salary. It was like, we will give this at least a year. And if the money holds out, maybe even longer. And if it doesn't work out, we can always go back. But also, it sounds like it's time to set up a little trip out here for you girls. And
Yeah, sign me up. I'll
I'll
be
show
there.
you our country. Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely recommend a little scouting trip, and you can hit some other European countries as well. But I'm going to bring us to a conclusion, but I do want to throw this out there. You know, if you would like to have another one of these chats, I've used Facebook because that's how I knew all of you. I could contact you, but if WhatsApp is a better way, let me know and I'll get us all connected in a group on WhatsApp. I'm totally open to having another one of these conversations. I think for Cary and Becky, you may think of things that you wanted to talk about, after this. So just let me know. We can always set up another one. But I'll go ahead and bring us to a close. And my final question for everyone is what are your final words here? What else would you like to share before we say goodbye? And let's do round robin here. Let's start with Becky.
Oh, why are you starting with me?
Actually, because you're in the upper right-hand corner of my Zoom grid.
Not because I always have something to say. Yeah, I was going over the Google Docs that you sent over, and I was like, oh, there's so much that I feel like we didn't get a chance to touch on. And there's just so much to unpack as far as culture and political atmosphere and bureaucracies, jobs. I would totally revisit this. I don't know that I have a final thought other than, I want to talk about this more.
Okay, we can make that happen. Cary, final thoughts?
I really appreciated this time and both you and Rudy sharing your experiences and your knowledge on something that can be so daunting for all of us in the United States who are thinking about doing this. But I do believe that our political climate has shifted significantly and pushed some of us to almost this desperation of how do I flee this and what could be coming. And so this is just really great to hear and think about and begin the process of what does that look like for me and my family, whether that comes to fruition or not. It's been great to hear.
I'm glad that it was helpful. Rudy?
I say it was definitely wonderful to meet you guys for the first time. I'm always thrilled to see folks who at least are starting to do the investigation before taking the leap. It's important to know that you have options, and you don't have to live your life in despair, right? Like you can take control of your life, and you can do what you need to do for yourself and for your family. As a parent, I get it. So I'm really happy to meet you guys. I'm hope that you guys find what you're looking for. And if there's any way I can help, I'm happy to help. If you guys want to have another one of these conversations, I'm always open to it. But I say you never have to twist my arm. I'm always happy to help anyone who wants to make that move, either it is here or elsewhere. I'll share whatever I can.
I think that pretty much says it all. I know for myself, I don't think it was hard, and I don't want to sugarcoat or romanticize. Like Becky said, there are pieces of changing culture that are very, very challenging. But Portugal, it kind of restored, the people of Portugal have restored my faith in community and family and how human beings can treat each other. It is not a utopia, but it is a place where people genuinely care about one another, sometimes a little too much. Sometimes people are in your business and you wish they weren't. But you find out that maybe we all need some of that. Maybe we need more people in our business holding us accountable and checking in on us. So that's my 2 cents. And I want to say thank you so much, Becky, Cary, and Rudy, for doing this. And I appreciate your perspectives and your questions and your comments. And we will try to set up another one soon.
I hear destiny and it's calling. I'll keep my head up high through the downs and lows, and we're all going life. Still nobody knows, but I'ma choose what's right and take what comes and goes. And ain't no one in life holding me back no more.
Today's episode was produced and edited by me. The theme music is the song A Year Ago by Nefex. If you know someone contemplating a move or visit to Portugal, please share this podcast. It's as simple as copying the link you use to access it and sharing it with others you think would benefit from it. You can find Mover Portugal Unpacked on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, and Buzzsprout. All links to all platforms can be found in today's show notes and at totspot.com. Be sure to comment, like, and subscribe. Just a gentle reminder, Mover Portugal Unpacked is for entertainment purposes only. It should not take the place of professional or legal advice. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed by the host and guests are their own. They reflect nothing more than that. All experiences are expressed through the filter of the individual. And hey, this is Portugal. We can all have very different experiences doing the exact same thing here. So please, do your own research and discuss your options with qualified professionals before making this or any other decision. And a final note, any opinions or thoughts expressed during this podcast are not meant to malign any group or organization. This is Melissa LaFleur. Thank you for unpacking today's portion of The Path to Portugal with me.
Way back a year ago,